Love Your Wife podcast. It's a Love Your Wife podcast. The Love Your Wife podcast. Love Your Wife. Love Your Wife podcast. The Love Your Wife podcast. The Love Your Wife podcast. Love Your Wife.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by aplanandplace.net. A Plan and Place sells customized planners for homeschool families. They help parents and students breeze through their homeschooling days. There's a planner for every age: early learners, elementary school, junior high, high school, and homeschool moms. Right now, you can get 10% off your entire order if you go to aplanandplace.net/loveyourwife and use the coupon code loveyourwife. That's aplanandplace.net/loveyourwife and use the coupon code loveyourwife. A Plan and Place, homeschool planners to help you breeze through your homeschooling days. My wife absolutely loves this planner. She uses it for our son. We were thinking about homeschooling, but we didn't really have a plan in place. So when we got this planner, it really kind of mapped out the day and showed us where we needed to go. She really loves it. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Frickin' Frack Foods. This is 5-star in a jar, made with San Marzano tomatoes, no sugar added, no preservatives, no seed oils, crafted by hand at small batch production. When you try this sauce, there's no going back. Every time I go to Sprouts, I have to come back with a jar of this sauce, or my wife's upset. She's not really upset, she's more disappointed in me because I should know better. I should bring back this sauce for her. So if you're looking for this sauce, you can go to Sprouts. If you live in Georgia, you can go to Publix. You can go to frickinfrackfoods.com, and they have a nice little cafe in Canton, Georgia. Look them up, frickinfrackfoods.com.
This is the Love Your Wife podcast with your host, Dennis Byrne. Today we have some very special guests today, Mike and Anne Gagliano. And one of the reasons why I asked to interview them is because I went to the FDIC conference. I was lucky enough to go. My department paid for me. And I took their marriage class. And it was nice for me and my wife to go in there together. And we're lucky enough to be firefighters, both of us. So we kind of have that advantage. And I would like to say that it helps us immensely. You know, being in a couple that's both firefighters, or a firefighter and a nurse, or somebody in kind of the medical field. So I really wanted to have you guys to come on and talk about what it's like to be with somebody who isn't in the medical field. So, would you like to give yourselves an introduction?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm Mike, 33 years retired fire captain from Seattle Fire. Over 40 years in the fire service. I retired about 7 years ago. I want to tell you, you're going to miss it. You'll miss it a lot.
Yeah.
You won't miss everything, but you'll miss getting on fire trucks and going to fires. You're going to miss being in the firehouse with the troops. That's hard to replicate out here in the real world. But I have been blessed to be able to be in the fire service for over 40 years. The thing I love the most about the fire service, I love the training aspect of the fire service, the learning of the job, that kind of stuff. So those are the folks that I gravitated towards. When seconds count, the bell hits, and you don't get to practice anymore. You want to have practiced a lot before, so that you're good at what you're doing when you can't do it over. And fortunately, that has allowed me to do classes, develop programs, write books, be involved with fire engineering and FDIC and that type of stuff. And so fortunately, my career with the fire service has extended beyond my shelf life of getting up on roofs and cutting holes and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And as a part of that, though, and in working on training stuff and always tried to find areas I could impact in the fire service that weren't being done as much. There's a lot of search classes, there's a lot of hose classes, that type of thing. And I gravitated towards the areas where I could have an impact. And so I did a lot of stuff in air management, wrote a book on that. And one of the things that I wasn't expecting to happen, and I'll let Ann tell that story, we ended up finding many, many years ago the real challenges that came with being a firefighter and being involved in a loving and caring relationship. We come to you, we're not going to apologize for who we are.
Yeah.
We are respectful of what, you believe what you want to believe, and you, like us, you live with consequences of your decisions and how you live life. But we are lovers of the fire service. So don't expect us to come on here and crap all over the fire service and say how it's terrible and it's killing us and all this stuff that's going on. We're going to be grateful till the day we die that God brought us to the fire service. And it has had an impact on our lives that's immeasurable. We're also big believers in marriage, and we're going to be strong voices for marriage, supporters of marriage, driving a stake in the ground and saying, this is the person that I walk through life with. I'm going to have their back. I'm going to be at their side. Nobody comes between us. And then we do the rest of life. And that involves a whole bunch of cool people, friends and other family and everything else. But, before God, this is the person that I'm walking through life with, and she gets my best. Where those two things intersect ends up being where there can be some challenges. This incredible calling of the fire service, this sacred calling of being in a relationship, where those intersect is where, interestingly, we started to have some conversations. And that's where I'll pass the baton to probably the brighter of the two of us, and we can talk about how we ended up talking to you.
All right.
Well, about, almost 20 years ago, Mike made captain in Seattle Fire, and he went off shift and was sent down to our training center down at the south of the city. And he was working every day as the training officer. So he was running into all 4 shifts the first time in like 15, 16 years. And every day as he'd see a firefighter he hadn't seen in a while, he'd say, well, how you doing? And how's your family? And gosh, he said for like 30 days or so, straight days, he was hearing again and again, well, I'm divorced. I'm on my 2nd marriage. I'm on my 3rd marriage, or my marriage is falling apart. You're still married. Can you give me some help? Can you give me some advice? And this was back in about 2006. And so nobody was talking about marriage or mental health or any of that stuff way back when. And at that time, Mike had started teaching and writing for fire engineering, and so he had those connections. But he came home to me and said, all my buddies are divorced. What's going on here? And we'd been married a while by then, and he just asked me. He said, is there something tough about living with a firefighter? And I said, yes, there is. There are a few tough things. And he said, well, could you maybe write some ideas down so I know what to say next time a buddy asked me for marriage help? Because Mike had no idea what to say or how to encourage marriage. And so I did. I wrote it all down and did a lot of research. And Mike was actually surprised by the things I was saying, because we had never really put them down on paper, and thought that should maybe be in fire engineering. And so he submitted it. They said, absolutely not. That's a technical magazine. We don't talk about emotions or family or marriage or any of that stuff. And finally, they agreed to put it in as an opinion piece, not as an article, even though I did a lot of research and got most of my research, ironically, had to come out of Australia, because they were actually ahead of us back then on more of the mental health side of things. So it ended up being in the magazine, and they got a huge response because it was kind of the first of its kind, and asked me to write a column after that, which surprised me. And so I wrote a column, 2 columns a month for 10 years, and that opened the door to the book. And Mike's a gifted instructor, and so he kind of helped. People were asking for a class about the book and the columns, and I was like, no way, that's not my thing at all. But Mike's so good at it, and he kind of helped me develop a class, and that ended up going at FDIC, and we've actually been teaching it all over the country now for over 10 years. So that's where it all came from, was him noticing all his fellow firefighters were getting divorced, and how did we deal with that? How have we survived? There's nothing special about us. So I had to think about what have we done? And it mainly just boiled down to, I noticed areas of conflict directly related to the fire service. There's all kinds of areas of conflict in any relationship, but I was trying to focus just on the fire service and the things I noticed impacting me as a spouse, and him bringing home. When we got married back in 1985, went into the military, went into the fire service. Mike was police for a while. And I noticed in my research, all the top divorce rates are military, fire, police, and medical. And we're all 4 of them. And marrying young, not a good idea.
We give you hope. Yeah, we did everything wrong.
Did everything wrong.
Married wrong, got into the wrong career fields, the whole 9
Yeah,
yards.
I had kids right away.
Yeah.
We were poor, all the things that had to, how did we survive all that? And I just wrote them down and shared in my examples the actual conversations that we have had over the years that nobody told us. When they dropped you into the meat grinder of the fire service or first responder world, they never told us a thing. Like, well, it was basically, hope you make it.
God bless, hope it works out.
And I remember them even saying way back when, your marriage probably won't. And I was kind of like, what?
Yeah.
Could we expound on that a little bit? And we were never told a thing, never given any advice. So that's what I was kind of hoping to do with my book and my columns, was to just maybe share a little real world experience and wisdom on some of the things that worked for us. And basically it kind of boiled down to really just 5 conversations that were absolutely essential, in my opinion, that were the areas of conflict between fire world and home life, and we give examples of the conversations and what we actually learned to say to each other, and that's where the class all comes from, was putting that in a format where spouses can hear those conversations. And so that's where it all comes from, was him asking me, are firefighters hard to live with?
Gotta be careful the questions you ask, man. Answer. Yeah.
Mostly awesome. Most of this world has been awesome, but there have been some conflicts. So that's.
I remember that part of the class too, when he asked you, and you said, "Yeah." He was kind of taken aback, like, "Well, really? Like, I didn't know that."
You had no idea.
Yeah, when your spouse ends up writing out a 10-page type document about what the challenges are,
and here you go, read this.
We've navigated some tough stuff, no question.
Yeah, it's probably pretty quick too.
Well,
right?
I guess
It's just like at the tip of her tongue.
Yeah, well, the encouragement for everybody is, I just hope on the front end, whatever we talk about today, I just hope you'll recognize that you can do it. That's man, just knowing you can do it, I think, is important. It's no different than throwing a ladder or anything else you do in the job. It's nice after you do it a couple times. I can do this. It's heavy, it's awkward, or it's hard to do, and man, it's hot in this gear and that. But then once you do it, it gives you encouragement.
Yeah.
We would just like to give you encouragement that 2 pretty average kids with not a lot going for us when we started. We started with nothing. We, started out young, and 40 years later, it's going to be 40 in a couple months. We're still loving life together, enjoying life together. We've navigated, 33 years of operations firefighting in a busy fire department, busy, lots of calls, lots of fire, big department, 1,000-member department. So lots of people. And you can really enjoy the calling of the fire service. You can really take the mission head on and do it right without sacrificing the things that really matter most to you. And we have always tried, there's an ebb and flow to it. We can talk about that ebb and flow, but we've always tried to put each other first. And in putting each other first, it allowed us then to prioritize. And I was able to give plenty of priority to my calling and how I earned a living, and was able to do the same, but we never sacrificed each other in the process. Or when we did, it was purposeful. It was like, for this period of time, there's going to be a concentration here, but we're coming back to medium, or we got out of whack and we got each other back into whack and said, "No, that's too much," So we never got too far to where damage was done that we couldn't repair.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I feel like, especially the younger firefighters, they want to go all in. That's great. It's great to do all these things. We have the smoke divers in Florida. Yeah. I don't know if you have something similar. There's some in Georgia.
Yeah, my friend David Rhodes is one of the guys who started that. Yeah.
So there's guys who are all in. They want to take these classes. Well, that's a week-long class in Georgia. And then then they got the fire conferences around, and if you work for a department, which most of these guys do, then they can go in training. So you're talking about coming off shift, going to headquarters to train the firefighters, then going away for a week to train, and then coming, at a certain point, like you said, it's great to be into the job, and I'm into the job. It's great to be into the job, and I don't like seeing people that aren't.
Yeah.
But you could still be a good spouse,
Yeah,
and
I agree. I agree 100%.
Mhm.
Being
Mhm.
into the job is righteous, and that's the way it should be. So you and me could ride together. I concur with you.
Mhm.
I can tell you, being awesome at the job, being all in on the job, when it comes at the expense of the most important things, is going to be hollow when you're doing it alone. It's going to be very
Very well
hollow. It's going
said.
to be a very hollow victory.
Mhm. So, Anne, I wanted to ask you, do you have any background in writing, or is that something that just came to you naturally?
Are you just naturally brilliant?
I would, yes, but not necessarily professionally.
Mhm.
I was actually writing major in college, wrote
Okay.
my high school newspaper. I was the editor and writer for my high school newspaper, was the secretary and writer for college newspaper and of the dorm. So yes and no. It's something I've always just naturally loved to do, but never really did a whole lot professionally. College, high school, then got married and had kids, so it was kind of on the back burner.
Mhm.
But I've always been involved in volunteer work and writing things for volunteer type stuff for church and our kids' school, and helped with the reading groups in their school. So yes and no,
Mhm.
not really. I guess it's just kind of a hidden talent that I got to develop later in life, which was actually perfect because didn't really start writing until my boys went to college. So it was kind of dormant for all those years and
Mhm.
so it's never too late to write, to start writing. Never too late.
Yeah. I'm just glad it's not me, because I don't think I would have made it on fire engineering.
Oh, if I can do it, you can do it. And editors work magic as well.
Okay. Um, so let's talk about how you guys met.
We met in 1984. We were 19-year-old college kids. Mike was running the dorm at our college, and I transferred I spent my freshman year at one college, wasn't happy there, transferred to another college my sophomore year. And it's kind of ironic. I was out of state, and in order to transfer to an out of state college, you have to live in the dorm. And I did it so late that I was on the wait list for the dorm, and I wouldn't have been able to do it. And Mike was actually the RA of the dorm I was trying to get into.
Mhm.
And kind of a little secret here, he knew my cousin who has a very similar name to mine, and he liked my cousin, saw my name, said, "Oh, well, I know her cousin." He moved me to the top of the waiting list. And I got into the dorm. And so I walked into the dorm. We met on day one, instantly liked each other. I mean, it was just instant. And he offered to help me move my stuff into my dorm room, which I thought he did for everybody because he was the student advisor there. Found out later he only did that for me. And we've been together since the day we met in August of '84. We're married a year later in August of '85 and went into the military and then the fire department. So been together a long time. We were instant best friends, instantly.
Mike, how did you propose?
So we were. I'm trying to think. That's a long time ago.
Mhm.
I actually proposed on my knees at the home I was raised in front of my family. Yep. And
Wow.
there was actually, it was funny, there was actually a little pressure being applied because I know my mom knew that this was right, and Ann knew it was right, and I actually knew it was right, but I was just kind of along for the ride a little bit in the whole thing. I was like, well, yeah, this is fun. We're having a good time. It's going to work out, right? And
Mm.
finally, I think one day my mom said, well, if we're going to be planning a wedding here pretty soon, we got to get to this. I'm like, oh, man, there's an expectation here on me. I guess I got to. And so then I tried to figure out a way to do it that was special and meaningful. And that to me seemed like the best way, a legacy type of thing, in front of the people that loved us most. And so that's the way we did it.
Yeah, I love asking that question because some people have to think it's this grandiose thing or, I made it special for my wife. We on our first date, we went to this bench and we just sat there and we talked for hours. So when I proposed, I brought her back to the same bench,
Oh,
and that's where I proposed. But, it was intimate, just her and I, and a lot of people think that it has to be this big thing, but I really like the fact that you did it in front of your family, because everyone knows right then and there. You don't have to make those phone calls. I think it's more special.
I love the way you did it. I think that's awesome. I think you find, we could have, to be honest, we could have done it 1,000 different ways and it would have been awesome. And so I think the important thing is, I think as much as anything, it's important to know what it is that you're doing and why. You need to understand the gravity of it and the significance of it. And then once you understand that, you understand you're committing for the rest of your life to a person, and to have their heart in your hand and to be able to trust that person. And the rest of the world might come out against you. The rest of the world might abandon you, but you have one person in this world that will not. And you're at their side, and you've got their back, and you're looking to bring out the best in them, and you're looking to serve them and sacrifice for them. If that's what you're about, you could probably do it on the back of a garbage truck and it would be sacred. If that's all the flash and the fancy in the world. So firefighters don't do that. I'm joking, but you know what I mean. All the flash and the fancy in the world, and proposing in front of the volcano in Hawaii, and with the music playing and everything else will be wonderful, but it won't mean a damn thing if you're not understanding what it is that you're doing and the commitment you're making. Your proposal on that bench is meaningful because all these years removed from it, you guys are committed to what that meant. That's why it's meaningful. There's plenty of people who have had your bench moment, or our family moment or whatever, and they look back on it either in shame or disgust or whatever because everything has gone sideways. I think it's important to make that commitment and know what you're doing and why, and then it will be really special. It will be really meaningful. It will be, the Bible calls it a stone of remembrance, or driving a stake in the ground, or whatever.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So after you propose, how long before you get married?
Well, like I said, we were young. We had only finished 2 years of college, and we were trying to figure out how do we finish college and get married. And so he proposed in May, and then we had to figure out what we were going to do in the fall. Are we going to get married? Are we going to go back to school? But we decided for us to get married and finish school, we would have to do the military, because we didn't have neither of us really had any money, and parents didn't have any money. So we decided we would get married in August. So it was literally 3 months, not even quite 3 months later, we got married. And then he went into he signed up and left in October for boot camp. Yeah. So
you do what you got, you do what you got to do, right, to make it work.
Yeah. So we had a very quick wedding. But even though I always dreamed of the perfect wedding, those dreams changed because I had the perfect guy, and we just knew we couldn't be apart, and didn't have a lot of money even for a fancy wedding. We paid for about half of it, got a little bit of money from family. Instead of buying an expensive wedding dress, I rented a very expensive, beautiful dress for $75.
Oh, wow.
It was a budget wedding all the way around, but we made it as special and wonderful as we could, and actually exceeded my expectations because of the emotion and the miracle of finding my soulmate. And so I always encourage people, don't not pursue your dream wedding, because weddings are important, but it's okay if it doesn't cost $100,000. What
Mhm.
matters is the sentiment and the commitment and the emotion and family. And we had a beautiful wedding, but very inexpensive. I couldn't afford fresh flowers. So we had silk flowers, which are half the price, and they're beautiful, So that's kind of, I read a thing once. There's like a direct proportion. The more expensive the wedding, the shorter the marriage. Like throw it all into the wedding. It's just this expensive party. Ours was really, really cheap, and yet we've had a 40-year marriage. So
That's
something
awesome.
to consider.
I have
Mhm.
I have an image in my mind of the video, because we were young, we're kids,
We were
we don't
20.
know anything.
Yeah.
Um, the church that we elected to do it at, um, really beautiful church, and so but they're used to doing weddings, and the ladies who do the weddings, they do weddings all the time. It's not a big deal. And I can remember about halfway through our wedding, the ladies who do the wedding all started to line up in the balcony, and they stayed there.
Mhm.
And afterwards, they came to us, and obviously we're doing it in a church. We're Christians, so it's important to us. And they came to us, person by person by person, and said that it was one of the most compelling weddings and messages they'd ever heard. And it was like, you know what? Very cool. We didn't need a ton to do it the way we wanted to do it. And I would take it right back to what we just talked about. There was a reason that Ann and I were there. Matter of fact, when we wrote the Challenges of the Firefighter Marriage book, I don't know if you can actually see it, but we designed the cover of it. It's
Mhm.
purposeful. There's a reason we did the cover the way we did the cover. You can see right in the middle, kind of. You can see there's two kids on their knees before God, kneeling together and giving our lives to each other to stand by each other. And all around that image is the stuff that the fire service brings in. All the danger and the trauma and the close friendships and the kids and everything else. It's a snapshot, and I hope a testimony that even as young kids who didn't know what we were doing, didn't have a dime to rub together, but we had the priorities right of what we were going to be about. And so when we talked about in sickness and health and in richer or poorer, all those other things, those were just details. That was just the
Mhm.
details of what's going on. And we've lived, 40 some years together now, a year dating and now almost 40 married. We've lived those years together with a whole wide range of stuff going on around us. Good times, bad times, sometimes horrible times, sad times, and times when we didn't know how we were going to pay our bills, and then times where we could help other people pay theirs. We had more. All of that was interesting. What was the constant was our commitment to each other, and that has sustained us no matter what else is going on.
So what do you think that is between you two? Did you guys have parents that that have been together for a long period of time, or do you feel like that it's just your connection that you have with each other?
It's a combo. I think parenting is important. Even though my parents divorced, which absolutely
Okay.
broke my heart, that was a negative that made me realize how important marriage is, because we were a really happy family and now we're a broken family. So that was a negative. However, the positive was both my parents taught me to really respect myself, and my father in particular made an effort to spend a lot of time with me so that I knew how a girl should be treated by a man. He was very kind and gentle and took me fishing and did all the things, took me to lunches, and um, taught me from a young age to expect to be treated very well with respect from a man. And so I think that's important for fathers to know. You matter to your little girls. Make sure you're showing them how they should be treated. And I was shown that from a very young age. And again, the divorce reinforced how important it is to make sure you stay together forever, because it matters. And both my parents actually regretted it later in life. So you got to work it out. Don't bail when things get tough, and stick it out. And Mike's parents are still together and wonderful. So he had, and I saw that when I met Mike, how wonderful his parents were and how much they really loved each other. And I wanted that. And Mike was raised to really, that's one of the first things I noticed about Mike was how much he loved his mother. And I've always heard, you know, a man by how he'll treat you, by how he treats his mother. And Mike adores his mom and was very good to her. So that matters too. You learn that from your parents. So we had some of that from our childhood. The thing that he and I click as individuals apart from our family, we just we're very best friends. And you said when you met your wife, you just sat and talked for hours. Mike and I did the same thing. That like the second night we met, we ended up. I noticed that he had a bunch of books in his dorm room. He had all these books, and I'm an avid reader, and we just clicked on that. We just talked all night about books, and I'd never really talked to a boy about books before, and we just really clicked. So I would encourage you to learn that from your parents, how to be treated, and then always seek someone that is your best friend that you can really talk to. And because Mike and I still really talk, we just talk, and we don't necessarily like all the same things. The guitars are a bit much in my opinion, but I'm happy for him that he gets to have what he loves. I like rock and roll. I'm not into guitars. I like Disneyland. He's not too keen on Disneyland, but
That's great. Just not like you.
Yeah. And so indulge each other's passions a little bit. And the cool thing about a best friend, he has always put my dreams and hopes and ahead of his own, and I've done the same. So when you find someone that's willing to sacrifice what they want for what you want, that's pretty special. That's we call it just having a selfless attitude, that thee before me. And when you both are like that, man, it's fun. He's always surprising me with cool stuff, and I'm always surprising him. And that's what a best friend does. You put the other person ahead of yourself. And so I hope that's a adequate answer.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I love going to FDIC and all these other conferences and listening to these people talk about the fire stuff and their credentials and whatnot. For the most part, you don't really see it, right? Like you see the person and they're telling you what they're about, and you have to kind of take it for face value, right? Unless you know them personally. So when I see you guys talk about marriage and you're up there and you're talking, and I look at Mike and he's staring at you with this look in his eyes like he's still in love. It's like the proof is right there. I'm like, I nudged my wife and I was like, do you see the way he's looking at her talk? Like, that's not something that you see every day. Like, that's something that I hope, and I do pretty much look at my wife like that, but I don't like that right there it was a special moment. And I'm sure that you guys share that often. I don't know if Anne, if you recognize it or if Mike recognizes it when Anne's doing it, but there's definitely a special look that I saw from Mike. And when I saw it, I was like, what do you guys have to say, man? I'm here.
Oh, that's good.
I'm ready to learn.
I'm glad it made sense too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, part of it is you would not know it by the way she's talking to you now, and you probably didn't recognize it when she was speaking from the stage. But that's not natural for her, getting up there and talking like that. It is something that she has had to. It comes back to that thing. The way you overcome fear is to have something that's more important than the fear. And I think she recognized when the articles started to resonate with people, I'm terrified of doing this. I don't necessarily want to be a public speaker, but this seems to be helping people. And if I'm going to help people, I got to get past this to convey this information in a way that you can use it. And, now she's gotten to the point where when she does it, I'm so proud of her watching her because I know what it took to get here. And it wasn't easy, and it's stomach churning stuff for those not comfortable with it. I'm really proud of her that the idea of conveying helpful stuff was more important than the butterflies and the fear I feel of screwing up. Screwing up is baked in the cake. If you can just get over that you're going to screw up from time to time and mess a word or whatever, then you get to the point where you can really impact people. So, there's love there. There's real pride. I'm really proud of her, of what she's done. And you heard her say, and this is antithetical to modern, I think, marriage counseling and relationship counseling. And I want you to know we don't care. We don't care that we're going against the grain.
All right.
The primary focus right now is you've got to look out for yourself. You've got to make sure that you're taken care of. You look out for yourself. And I understand philosophically why, because there's a lot of people who've been damaged. They put their hearts out and they've just been trampled on and destroyed. And it's horrifying. And I'm sad for that. But I want you to know that the goal remains the same. You're looking for somebody that you can look out for. And our thing works because we look out for each other. We put the other person first. And it's almost that, cart before the horse kind of thing. If you will give and sacrifice and not claim everything for yourself with the right person who's also doing that, there's this loving reciprocal bond that occurs. It's what you want. It's what you want to strive for. You want to strive for the dream. I saw one of the top books on Amazon right now is F the Fairy Tale. That's what it's called. And it's like, forget the fairy tale. The fairy tale of a long-lasting relationship is over. And I want to write a new book. I want to write a book, F the Fairy Tale. Baloney. It's baloney. I want to strive for this wonderful, we call it writing an epic love story. I want to write an epic love story. And that epic love story involves being in the fire service and having kids and family and friends and other hobbies. That you're not making an idol out of your marriage, and then that's all you're worshiping is your marriage. But at the center of everything we do for us is a faith in God that by extension comes down to the commitment we made, and everything else revolves around that. We don't revolve around everything else, and everything else doesn't get to dominate. We come first, and then everything else is an extension of that. Remember this: there's periods where certain things dominate. Like when you have kids, trust me, there's going to be times where the kids are going to dominate everything, right?
Yeah.
So you have to really be careful. You have to pay attention to it, and it's right. You got to raise the kids and look out for them and get them to their stuff and whatever else. There's going to be times where the fire department at times will dominate or whatever. But it doesn't get to have it all. And in the middle of it all, we are talking with each other and saying, for this period of time, for this week, I'm going to be off doing fire stuff. I ain't going to be doing fire stuff for a month. I'm going to be back, and we're going to be connected and doing our thing.
Nice. So let's get back to the wedding. So what was your favorite part about your wedding?
It's funny because those were the days when they were just starting to do videos. Video was a brand new thing in 1985. I almost can't even really watch the video because it doesn't capture what was going on in my heart and mind. It was so much more intense and magical that a video almost downplays it. So it's an ironic thing. However, we did have a video. But I remember right before I was getting ready to walk down the aisle with my dad, and some of the things had gone wrong, like they got the wrong size pants for the ring bearer, and I remember just saying, I can't do this. I was just I was such a nervous wreck, and I'm actually a very shy person, and the thought of walking in front of all those people, and it was, the pants were messed up. One of my bridesmaids showed up with no shoes, so she had to walk barefoot. It's like, how can you come to a wedding in tennis shoes? She did. So things like that and I remember just being frazzled, and I can't do this, and I'm scared. And then my dad just kind of took my arm, and we started walking, and I saw Mike, and I saw his face, and it was like everything just went away. And it was like, all these little things don't matter. All that matters is him. And that's my best friend. And I just put my eyes on him, and he was just beaming at me. And that's the moment that has always stuck with me, that all that matters right now is I am marrying my very best friend today. And I walked, and it went from I was going to say even panic and terror, to just sheer bliss and joy. And there's something about exchanging those vows in front of the people you love, that's just almost magical. And there was almost a powerful presence, I guess I'd say, of God's blessing and God's presence, that he was actually binding us. It was a holy union. This wasn't just a party. This was a spiritual joining with my soulmate for all eternity. And as we were saying our vows, I remember just kind of going, holy mackerel, this is real.
It's a big deal. Yes.
This is real. This isn't just some party, this is real. And that's what I remember. And that's what the videos can't capture, that powerful, almost holy presence of something beyond yourself. And I think, is it Andrew Clavin that said, your marriage becomes this otherworldly thing that is beyond you. And that's what we see marriage as. It's no longer him, it's no longer me. It's something else entirely, and it's beyond us. And we've always viewed it that way, that we've been together longer than we've been apart. We've been here.
That's true, huh?
We built this whole life that is bigger than just he and I separately, and gone through kids together. The cool thing about being a grandparent is that we're getting to see each other as grandparents. I get to see what a wonderful grandfather he is, and he gets to see me as a grandma. And that's what's exciting about a happy marriage. You get to see things about your partner even after all these years that are brand new, and like the grandkids, or traveling together. When we started teaching and traveling together, that was fun. We're seeing all these places we've never seen before together. And that's the neat thing about marriage. And that's what I remember about the wedding, was just going from panic and fear to, wow, this is my best friend. So,
did you guys write your own vows?
Mike wrote his.
Yeah.
I was too shy to speak. I couldn't have spoken anything. That's how shy I was. So, but Mike wrote beautiful. We did the traditional vows, and then Mike added his own vows to that, and I just smiled. I was so shy.
Well, I mean, I don't blame you at all, because that's
what he said. Too shy.
We did our own vows, and we had our first look, and we said our vows to each other. But if we had to say our vows for the first time in front of everyone, yeah, that's tough. Yeah. So kudos to you, Mike. What about you, Mike? Do you have a favorite memory to your wedding?
I confess it may be hindsight, but my favorite thing is what you saw, that picture on the front of the book. Mm-hmm. I'll cherish that moment of kneeling before God, and we really, when we knelt together there before God, that there was a line drawn in the sand. There was a sacred vow made, and it's every bit as important to me today as it was then. And I'm grateful to say, I think because Anne has honored it, and because I have honored it, God has honored it. And we have not strayed from that sacred vow, and we have benefited amazingly in our lives because of it. I mean, people have come and gone in our lives, family come and gone, interests, money, periods of doing great, periods of feeling really good and feeling really crappy. It's all come and gone. The fire service, operational fire service, has come and gone. I don't get on fire trucks anymore. I don't get to get my validation anymore as a man and as a professional from actually being on a roof cutting a hole or being in a fire and searching for somebody. That validation comes now from having done it, but now also teaching about it and encouraging other people and that type of thing. But things come and go, man. You're going to go through phases, and then there's going to come a time, and it probably isn't that far down the road, but there's not going to be a person in the world that gives a damn what I say or talking about whatever, right? They want to hear the new people talk about it, and so then that part will be gone. The consistent thing through life, personally, professionally, in good times and bad, is Anne and I on that moment gave ourselves to each other. And my sincere hope is that we'll keep doing things the right way until we step into eternity. Remember this. Anne said there's nothing special about us, and there is not. We are you. We are all of you who are listening. We're just two fallen, sinful kids, trying to make a life together. If we stop doing the right things, every single thing that has happened in every other marriage that didn't make it, we are susceptible to. It's sticking with those vows, staying with each other, committing to each other is what has allowed us to, to build a relationship and a depth of experiences that's priceless. I wouldn't trade our love story for anything. And just so you know, you firefighters that are listening, I had an awesome career. I had a career in the fire service I can't believe I got to have. I still can't believe it. Still can't believe it's going on. I can't believe I'm teaching at FDIC. I can't believe I got to be a fire captain on a kick-ass rock and roll truck in Seattle Fire and be part of the UL burns when they were newer. I was part of the UL studies and on that board when that stuff was new. Now it's a huge machine. But I can't believe I got to write fire service books and I'm writing another one now or do illustrations with Paul Combs. Paul Combs and I are working on an illustration right now. I can't believe it, gang. All that to say, I got to live my dreams in the fire service. I'm grateful that my dream of a epic love story was able to live with that very well, and that I just don't have a nightmare at home and a dream at work.
Very well put. Well, I think a lot of people, when they get married, they don't really think about those vows as being sacred or, with the divorce rates, what they are, it's close to 50%. And for firefighters, who knows what it is? It's probably in the 70s. I just don't think that nowadays we don't really think about those vows being as sacred as they are, which is unfortunate. So I'm glad that you brought that up. I've had a couple people talk about it on the podcast about those vows and what they mean to them. And that's why they've stood by their spouse no matter what, through thick and thin. But then other people are just like, yeah, that happened.
Look at the downstream consequences. I'd always be desirous of looking, because everybody has opinions and everybody has things that they believe are true, and some of those are informed by just bad things that have happened to them. So that's the reality of life. I'd be more than happy to share with you and stack up the value that we've gotten about actually committing to our vows, seeing them as sacred. I would stack up the value that has come to us personally and individually versus the lives that people have led in their relationships of those who did not take their vows seriously or violated their vows. I think there's a downstream destruction that occurs when you violate your vows. And believe me, we're in this world. We talk to people all the time. There is a destruction that occurs when those vows are, number one, either were not true, were not taken seriously, or were violated. What goes downstream of that's unpleasant. And it ain't like we got it all figured out and everything in our world is pleasant and awesome and, kumbaya. We've got plenty of moments and plenty of dust-ups and arguments and disagreements. I circle back to whatever else occurs, arguments, disagreements, bad times, we come back to, it's you and me against the world, baby. Let the wind blow. It's you and me against the world.
Yeah, it's great. And I always go back to, I think, Hollywood making it seem like the perfect relationship is, butterflies and rainbows constantly nonstop. But I don't view a perfect relationship like that. Yeah. I think a perfect relationship is communication with arguments, right? It's not every time when my wife comes to me with something that I said hurt her or something that I need to do more around the house. I don't think like, wow, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. I think, okay, like I can do those things for you, So I think we need to kind of rewrite what it means to have a perfect relationship, because Hollywood has messed us up since we were kids.
Yeah.
Well,
watching Snow White.
Yeah, multiple ways.
Or to have no committed relationship at all.
Yeah.
Just be casual and change people like you change clothes. Nothing that lasts. Or the perfect relationship is one person completely and totally is the doormat of another person. None of that is true. It's closer to just real life best friends and being there for each other no matter what, even when it's not easy, and putting each other ahead of everything else, and making sure that my firefighter gets to be a good firefighter, and my firefighter makes sure I get to be what I want to be, but at the same time, not sacrificing anything to a profession or to the kids, but encourage your hobbies and dreams, but to a point. Wait, this is too far. That's the real world. That's a real marriage.
Well, and in taking care of each other, you recognize you have to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You want to be honorable at making a living. You want to, whether you're working as a nurse or as a firefighter or a teacher, you want to earn your living in an honorable way. And the spouses supporting each other and encouraging that you do earn that living in an honorable way, and you're going to have to put time to that. If you're a teacher, you're going to have to learn to be a better teacher, continuing education. Same with a nurse or firefighter or anything. But never allowing it to dominate. And I don't think my buddies at work would have believed me if it was true, but I'm telling you, if the fire service would have gotten in the way of my relationship and would have been too damaging or destructive to what she and I had, I would have left the fire service. The fire service wouldn't have gotten to win. And believe me, I love the fire service.
Mm-hmm.
I love what the fire service has meant and what it's done for me. I do. Where your priorities lie goes a long way towards what's going to get your time, your treasure, your stuff. And I think most people have a vision of what they think their priorities are. I would challenge you to really challenge that. And we kind of talk in the class about, if you just go over the last 3 months, go look and see what your calendar says, where you spent your time, and your checkbook says where you spent your money, you'll have a really good snapshot of what your actual priorities are versus what you say your priorities are. And then that gives you a good launch pad once you do that to go, okay, well, what do we really believe? And what do we want to be about? And then you can start to, make effort to try to recorrect that. I always felt like there's always a push and a pull. There's an ebb and a flow. Too much time spent on work and hobbies and whatever else, not enough time spent on work and hobbies and everything else. And it's navigating that push and pull to try to just keep pulling it back to center, whichever way it's going, that I think is part of the maturity. That's where you mature in life and as a couple.
Yeah, and it takes the other person, like Anne, I'm sure you had to have those conversations with Mike about, hey, you're spending too much time doing this. I need you home, right? And that's a hard conversation to have, especially because his love for the fire service, right? I'm sure you had to have some of those conversations.
Oh, many times, many times. It's not just a one-time conversation.
There's no magic wand and it's fixed.
It's again and again. And sometimes it was just me saying, hey, I'm starting to feel distant from you. And I couldn't rest until that distance was bridged. I'm not comfortable being distant from him. And what I mean by distant is just emotionally detached. I miss you and I need you. And sometimes it was just, we need to just sit down and have a cup of coffee together and just talk to me. Doesn't have to be a huge, big thing. Other times it was, one of these projects or one of these hobbies has to go because I'm losing you. And there was a time when Mike was on a real baseball team and a fantasy baseball team. One of them had to go because I never see you. You're either on the phone doing your fantasy baseball team or you're at the other baseball and he loves sports. But I remember just saying, gosh, I miss you. And it's not, I hate you if you don't do this. It was I miss you. And he was like, you're right. Something's got to go. And instead of a professional obligation that he can't get out of, he actually got rid of the fantasy baseball team for a while. So those are some of the choices that are made, that something has to go. And it doesn't always have to be the fire service. It can be a hobby or something else that can go.
So at what point after when Mike got got in the fire service? At what point did you realize that this is just kind of a different profession? Because you're alone for 24 hours, you have to be more independent, you know?
Yeah, the being alone thing actually occurred in the military because he was on
Okay.
shift as a crash firefighter. Um, he wasn't under tremendous duress that he was under later in the big city fire department. But the being alone was actually more so because in the military, he'd work 24, off 24, work 24, off 24, work 24, and then after 2 weeks of that, home for 3 days. Way
3
more hours.
days.
Yeah, the Seattle,
It was brutal.
it was
Yeah.
brutal.
It's a young man's game.
And he was sleep deprived. I was scared witless because we were stationed in Louisiana, almost like being overseas for us. Had a baby right away, and now I'm alone every other night. And then we had another baby alone every other night. And there for a while there, I didn't know I had this in me, but I started to get like night terrors. I would wake up and I didn't know because you start to lose track of, is he home or not home? Who is that in my sleep? And I actually got like would scream thinking he was an intruder. I mean, it really messed with my sleep. And so that was kind of one of those times when Mike almost considered he might not be able to be on shift because I was having trouble sleeping. So that was the first thing I noticed. We figured that out. But then I noticed when he got on with Seattle Fire, now he's rocking and rolling. I mean, he's going to fires and car wrecks and heart attacks, and I definitely noticed a change in him, even way different than the military, because the military was pretty mellow other than the sleep stuff. So yeah, fortunately we'd been married a while, so I knew it was fire department related, but it was still tough to watch him change a little bit. I think what happens with some couples, they marry a firefighter who's already a firefighter, and they think some of the quirks and things I noticed, they think it's just him or just her, that's the way they are, where I knew it was the fire department because he wasn't like that before. So I think I've had a little bit of an advantage recognizing the real impact of the fire service.
Yeah, that is interesting. That's something I never thought about because I got with my wife when I was already working as a firefighter for a while. So yeah, that's very interesting. So Mike, how did that work? Yeah, I know that you guys talk about reentry time, and I would like to get into that. But also, is your wife, was she somebody that you can go to when you had a messed up call, or you saw something that you kind of wish you didn't but had to go through? Was she somebody that you could have that kind of communication with? Because I have a lot of firefighters that are married to more of civilian type that don't want to hear anything about it.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and the answers are all over the place. Depends upon the person, depends upon the relationship. I think one of the brilliant things that Anne did in the book is we tried really hard not to try to jam you into a cookie cutter of this is what a good marriage relationship looks like, because I don't think that mold exists. There's principles, I think, that are the same. I think you'll find common principles, but how you play those out as a couple and the mechanics of them, a lot of that depends upon how you're structured, your personalities, do you both work at high octane jobs? Do you have kids? All that stuff kind of, that kind of determines what the best application is. When Anne came up with the conversations, what she identified was, well, there's like 1,000 things that the fire service brings into our world. But when you narrow them down, they all kind of fall into these 5 categories that if you navigate this conversation well in advance of the bad day, you'll have a good chance of having some tools to deal with it without, having blow-ups or hurt feelings or just real damage. And reentry time was one of those. Talking about the bad runs was one of those. I don't think that I really shared all that much with Anne about the bad runs. And the main reason was I didn't want that stuff banging around in her head, because it was tough stuff. I think she wanted to play more of a role, and that was why that conversation's important to have. Because I think, as she would describe it, we went about it all the wrong way. I didn't want her to have the grisly details or know. I'm actually pretty private, I guess, about my emotions and that stuff. I didn't want to hurt her with that stuff, but she's my best buddy. She knows. She knows that I'm sad, or she knows that I'm angry, or she knows that I'm feeling hurt, and it ends up starting to be taken personal when, I'm like, I don't want to talk. Well, what's wrong? And I had to come to the conclusion that she's not a mind reader. I have to let her know. I don't have to tell her about the blood and the gore. I don't have to share the primary reasons why the video keeps playing in my head, but I have to let her know it's happening, because now she knows, oh, okay, great. There was something that went on that's bugging him. At least now I can shift into that mode where I'm not taking it personal, and I can do the things that he does need when he's feeling hurt or sad or damaged or traumatized or whatever. That's the important thing. I mean, I think many times spouses have their own way of trying to help you cope with things, and it may not be the right way. That's why you have the chat. As a spouse, what do you need from me as a spouse when I have a just crap run and the video's playing in my head and it's disturbed me and it's making me sullen or whatever? What do you need from me? How much do you need? How much do you want to know? And I get to say to her, well, here's what I want. And I don't want a big, long 20-question lecture about what it was or what it wasn't. I don't want to go through those details. And don't be offended when you may hear me talking on the phone with the firefighters that were there about it, because that's cathartic for me and that's what I need. They were there. They know all the gory details without us having to say them. They know all the gory details, and we can talk with each other about it in a way that I can't really share with you. Again, all the conversations are designed to get you on each other's side. Right back to kneeling together, saying we're going to have each other's backs. What's best for you in whatever it is that we're talking about? What's best for you in whatever it is that we're talking about? And trying to make those things work. I think that's what successful couples do again and again and again. Unsuccessful couples demand their own rights. Unsuccessful couples look out for themselves. Unsuccessful couples just ignore it. And then when it gets so bad that the other person's so damaged, we watch this happen all the time. It's horrible. So much damage is done because of the silence and the, not dealing with things, and just damage. Pretty soon the other person's so damaged you can't reclaim it. It's awful to watch it happen. We just encourage you to have the chats and get on each other's side.
That's such a great answer to that question, because when I talked to my wife about that, because she's a firefighter, and I just feel so lucky that she knows what I'm going through.
Yep.
Right. And when other people don't have that, I'm like I have a buddy who is a firefighter and his wife is a teacher. And right off the bat, his wife said, I don't want to hear about any of it. Right. I don't want to hear about any of it because I can't deal with it. Please don't tell me. But I think what you just said made a lot of sense, as far as you don't have to give her the gory details. You just have to know that something bad happened. I can't get it out of my mind. And this is kind of what I need from you.
Yeah, and if I was talking to them, or Ann and I was talking to them, we'd be respectful in what we say, because I think I know what she means. I don't want to.
Yeah, of course.
I don't want to blow by blow. I don't need to hear about all the gore and the blood. But just by the fact that you made the decision to be married to a firefighter, you're going to have to accept that part of being a good spouse is being for them when they've seen traumatic and terrible things. And the same is going to be true for the firefighter who marries a teacher, who's going to have to deal with somebody who has been dealing with, 30 of people's unique individual snowflakes all day, and human interactions off the chart. And they're going to need to talk about those things, or talk about the crappy parents, or talk about in a way. Now, I don't need to have all that detail, but I decided to marry a teacher. I'm going to have to talk with that individual and figure out, how do we navigate this together? They're stay-at-home moms. I mean, Ann was home with the kids. Good God, man, she was just looking for some adult conversation. that's part of that chat that has to go on, and I think she captured it brilliantly in doing it as a conversation. You pointed it out. Our cookie cutter doesn't fit you guys because you have a resource, at least one that I didn't have and that Ann didn't have. You have a firefighter spouse who understands it on a different level. So now you guys have those conversations with what's true in your relationship, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and I want to add, true love means going beyond your own comfort level in a situation, because when back in the day when we were trying to navigate, for example, how do we handle these tough runs, it really bothered me, and I can't even express how much it bothered me that he didn't want to talk to me about it. That used to really bother me, and it actually hurt my feelings. And there were times when I felt like, again, you're pulling away from me because you have all this stuff in your head and you're not telling me. And that hurt. And it actually at times frightened me that maybe I'm not a very good wife because he doesn't trust me with this or that. So the conversation, it took us a while to figure it out. I finally just said, instead of getting upset that you're not talking to me because then he'd pull away even more, I finally just said, well, what do you need? What does help you? And
Voila, right?
it was painful to not give him what I wanted to give him. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to meet his need the way that works for me, because I love to talk about grief and pain and all those. I'm very comfortable with that. He didn't, and so it was hard to let go of my solution and my expectation and what I wanted, and I really just genuinely learned to give him what he wanted, and that to me is what love is giving your partner what they need in the way they need it, not in the way you want to give it. Does that make sense? And when I would do that, he was so grateful that, and I found that when I just comforted him and just held him, or affection, or even just some space with no guilt, just it's cool. Well, yeah. Later, he would totally open up and talk to me. So it was interesting when you let go of your demands and expectations, then it would come back to me 1,000-fold, and he would totally. What I really wanted was, are you okay? And your emotions. Like he said, I don't need the details. I just want to know if you're okay. And I would get that, and get way more than I ever would have gotten if I had demanded it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Let it go and let him come to me when he was ready. And that's to me what marriage sometimes means, almost just painful sacrifice of saying, I don't get it. I don't want to do it this way, but this is what you need. Okay. And he does the same for me. When I want to sit down and vent, I know it's painful for him sometimes. He doesn't want to hear all my emotions and this and that, but he does it, and he does it graciously. And I'm so grateful. And that's what sacrifice is.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. And there was actually an incident that just happened to me last shift a couple days ago where I had a gun pulled on me.
Wow.
And yeah, they were like 10 feet away from me, and the cops came out and everything. Luckily, obviously I'm fine. But I went back to the truck and I grabbed my phone, and I was thinking, do I tell my wife? And then I was like, of course I'm going to tell her, right? But if she was a civilian, it's somebody that doesn't, then she's just going to feel, part of it is protecting your spouse too.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously I'm okay. And I don't know what the right answer is to that question, but luckily for me, like I said, she's in the service. I told her, and she was like, okay, well, you okay? Yeah. All right. And then we were able to have a conversation about it later, but
yeah, there is no right answer. Again, it is a conversation. It's a coming to, and it may ebb and flow a bit. It may change as you do it. Anne's way more comfortable now with some of the details than she ever would have been early on in our relationship, because now she's lived with it for a long time and she's started to hear some of the stories and that type of stuff. So, your relationship matures. Your answers to whether or not you share if a gun was pulled on me might be different 5 years from now than it is now. The point is, you've got to be talking with each other to see what is okay, what is needed, or it's just going to be luck of the draw of whether what you're doing is the right thing. And more than likely, your default solution is the one that's best for you, not the one that's best for your spouse. And that's not a selfish thing. It's just what you know. It's what Anne knew, so that's what she did. It's the last thing I wanted.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that open communication and listening to what your spouse really needs, and having those talks about it. And there are touchy subjects and sensitive subjects, but sometimes you feel like you're protecting and you might be hurting yourself at the same time.
Sure.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about was reentry time. So I'm lucky enough, and I'm lucky in quotation marks, I have an hour drive home from work. So I get a little bit of a decompression time before I walk through the door. But sometimes I do feel it, when you have a bad night and you're kind of passing out, then you enter the door and then you kind of get attacked in a good way by your wife and your kid. And you kind of need a second, right? So I'm really glad that you guys brought up the reentry time. And I think I saw it in a Step Up and Lead book too. Frank, you know his last name, right? Frank Viscario?
Viscuso. Yeah.
Viscuso.
Yeah.
He had mentioned it. I read his book a little bit, and I would like to know what that reentry time was like for you guys.
Well, that was when Mike asked me, back when I wrote all my stuff about living with a firefighter. That was kind of the first thing I wrote down. I didn't even really have a word for it, but I just came up with reentry time because that's kind of the first thing back when he got on with Seattle Fire that I noticed becoming a problem. It wasn't a problem in the military, even though we were apart. He didn't have near the duress that he was under in the mess. So I noticed that going wrong. Probably that very first Christmas back in 1990, he came home. We had made plans before shift to go get a Christmas tree with our two little kids. And he came in the door 24 hours later. We didn't have cell phones back then. It was long distance to call each other in the city. So we hadn't spoken in 24 hours. And he came in the door, and me and the two kids pounced on him and said, "Oh," and I had the diaper bag all packed, and here we go, we're going. And he's like, what are you talking about? And so much had happened in his world in that 24 hours, fires and car wrecks and you name it, up all night. He had completely forgotten about those plans, and he was not up for them. He was tired and grouchy, and in those early days, to me, it was like, well, too bad. This is what we planned, and you're going to have to buck up and just go along. And it was a terrible day. We had a terrible day, and he was grouchy and tired, and he tried, but he failed. And I remember going into the bathroom where my kids wouldn't see me and just weeping and just thinking, wow, this is not the same guy I married. I don't know if I can do this, if he's going to be like this. So that was kind of the first big conflict that we had, and it was over reentry time. And what I learned, it took me a long time, again, nobody talked to us about this, was I learned to just give him a minute when he comes in the door. He's exhausted. He's been through it. He's been through very intense experiences that are very different than what I've been through at home, sheltered and in a safe place. And I learned to give him a minute. I learned part of reentry time is maybe even changing plans. I learned to read very quickly what kind of condition he was in And you know what? Let's do the tree tomorrow. That's okay. Or it would have been better for him, better for me. And then what he used to describe it as the assault, where maybe not a Christmas tree, but just this is all that happened while you were gone, and I miss you, and how was your shift, and
Fix this,
and 20 questions, and here you've got the kids, and I didn't mean any harm, but I was causing harm, and then he'd get grouchy and maybe snap at me, and then I'd snap back, and it would take 2 days to reconcile, and then he's back off to work again. And so what we learned to do was I learned to give him a minute. He learned to find things that would help him shift gears, like go take a nap. Don't just stagger around and make us all miserable. Do something to make you feel better. I would give him that time. And then later, then he would give me what I needed was, I just want to talk to you. I just want to reconnect, or maybe I needed a break.
time away from the kids.
Time away from the kids, or, it was very reciprocal, but it took us a long time to figure that out, that his world was very different now and very intense. And instead of just being mad at each other, that was something we learned to do, was to shift expectations when we first came back together. And it can be awkward for any couple to be apart and then come back together. But for the firefighter couple, we're apart for very long periods of time. And like I said, very intense things can happen to your firefighter. And so that was something that really we needed to address, because like I said, we were really having a conflict at that door, coming back together. And I've taught this for a long time, and I've had a lot of military soldiers actually become firefighters. And they have told me, soldiers in combat have told me, believe it or not, reentry time is harder for me as a firefighter than it ever was as a soldier. And I would say, you're kidding. How is that possible? And he said, they have said, because when you're deployed, you're there and you stay there and you stay in that mode for a very long time. As a firefighter, he said, they have said, it's the same thing. You have to turn it on, that gear for combat. Same thing in the firehouse, so that you turn that gear on. But then as a firefighter, you have to go home the next day and somehow shut it off. And they said that back and forth is way harder than just staying in combat, staying deployed. So it is an important concept, and it's important for spouses to understand the intensity of the fire world, and to navigate that, having to come home and try to shut that gear off, and then work that. That's what reentry time is all about, is finding ways to help each other navigate the two worlds and coming back together.
Yeah, that's tough, man, because they think, oh, aren't you happy to see me? You haven't seen me in 24 hours. Like, you don't want to see me or the kid. Do you not love us? It's like, no, that's not the case. And once again, I'm lucky because, my spouse is a firefighter, so she gets it completely. But I can understand, being a civilian, it just being kind of jarring.
Well, you definitely want to get that one right. That's the conversation to have. And remember, every conversation's reciprocal. So if reentry time is good for the firefighter coming from a different world, it's also good. It's reciprocal for the spouse who's been with the kids all day and wants a different world for a little while, or from the person who's come and taught kids all day and is coming home at night. And you get reentry time coming from the job. You give reentry time to your spouse coming from whatever world it is that they're living in that's different than the one you're in. Again, you cycle back to looking out for each other, right? What do you need? What can I do for you? And in looking out for each other's needs, you both tend to get what you want.
Yeah. That's awesome. So at what point, Anne, did you realize that you needed to have this kind of conversation with Mike about it, about like reentry time, and how long do you think he was working before that? Or was it at the 20-year mark?
Oh boy. I don't really know time frame. I guess I just trial and error. I noticed that we were fighting. There were
Mhm.
many days spent reconciling from how hurt I was when you came home and weren't happy to see me. Like
You waste a lot of time.
we wasted a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
time. And so I guess you would just say somewhere, I would say in the first couple years,
Okay.
I started to figure out that I just needed to give him a minute to walk in the door before I pounced. Something that helped with that, um, somewhere in there, we got a cell phone. So cell phones
All right.
helped with that. I just need to hear from you. And Mike got really good over the years, of he would call me at a specific time. I never called the firehouse because I couldn't. It was long distance. And he'll tell you, I never even called him on his cell phone. Reason being, he was at such a busy house. I didn't want to bother him. However, I did want to hear from him, and he knew that. So he was very good he would call me every day right around 6 o'clock if he could. And I would make sure I was by the phone, and that really helped with reentry time, because now I've connected with you and I know you're okay, and I was able to talk to you a little bit and tell you what's going on with the kids or whatever. And then he was so awesome. He would call me again at 10 o'clock, which is when they could go to bed. And I just loved that he would call and say, no matter how busy he was, he would call on or near 10 o'clock and just say good night. And that meant the world to me. And that helped a lot with that reentry time pounce, because I have connected with you. But that was an issue for at least a couple years, first early years. And, I was young and probably way more sensitive back then. Over the years, I've gotten tougher. It's like, yeah, you're home. Who cares? Just kidding. But in those early days, especially, very emotional and very, very worried. And again, home with two little kids. There were some real serious clashes at the beginning. And, but yeah, we worked on that many times over the years.
Now, you'll be surprised as you know, if you expose 20 different firefighter couples to this idea and they have the conversation, you'll be amazed at the difference in what they come up with that works. Because different things work for different people. Different things resonate, different things chill you out, different schedules, so having to make it work with passing the baton in the morning of the kids so that the spouse can go to work. That's your world. But you want to figure this out, because this crash at the door is really real, and really damaging things can occur if you just keep crashing at the door. There's days that come up where you just got to suck it up, and you've been up all night. Spouse has been up all night. The kids still have to be taken care of. And on that day, you just suck it up. But if it's suck it up, suck it up, suck it up, suck it up, I promise you what ends up happening is bad stuff gets said, arguments happen, wasted time. And eventually some things get said that you can't undo, or things get done you can't undo, or you're so tired and sick of each other that it's like, why are we doing this? You lose sight of what it is. So this is just one of those easy ways to eliminate variables in your relationship.
That's such a great point that you made with the calling on shift, because there's a lot of people, and I was one of them, up until I think we had our son Luke, where I wouldn't call her at all on shift, and vice versa. We just wouldn't talk. And there's a time where we were on separate shifts, so we wouldn't talk for 48 hours. Well, we text, but not on the phone. We wouldn't call each other. But I think that's a big thing, calling and actually hearing your spouse's voice and having a better conversation, because texts, they could be weird at times. It's hard to have a conversation through text.
We're fortunate that's not our generation. We still like talking. It's harder, I think, for a younger generation that's grown up on texting as the primary means of communicating. I would just say to the firefighter and spouses, how wonderful is it, man, that you got a human being in this world that actually wants to talk to you, wants to know how you are, wants to know how you're doing. And I know in many cases, actually, it can be a source of irritation. I just talked to you, or did I really need to know that? And I would just encourage you. I understand, I do, but I'll tell you, when you'll know that, yeah, that was important is when you have a deficit of it
Mhm.
and that person is gone and you don't have that anymore. You'll really know that that was something that you valued and should have valued more. And we're trying to encourage you to value it on the front end of it, not on the back end when it's too late.
Awesome. So I got your book here too.
Yeah, very good.
Woohoo!
Did you read it?
Yeah. I haven't had the opportunity yet because I'm studying for a promotional exam.
When was that? That was like how many months
February.
ago?
February. I'm studying for a promotional exam.
Oh,
so I got
yeah. Moment of silence.
yeah,
Maybe you'll get that put on your promotional bibliography. It'll be good for everybody.
Yeah. So one of the bullet points here that's in the back is the importance of a healthy intimacy in your relationship.
Yeah.
Would you like to share what you mean by that?
Well, I would say this one probably falls under the harshness conversation and talking about some of the emotional distance that can form in a couple that is in the first responder world because of being perpetually exposed to trauma. It's real easy for a first responder to harden their hearts and become a little detached emotionally. And I noticed that with Mike a little bit, that Mike was never ever harsh or spoke harshly in the years before Seattle Fire. And now I noticed a little bit of terseness in his speech coming home, a little bit of maybe even a darker perspective on life, a little more grim and detached emotionally. And intimacy in marriage is really built upon emotional availability and being open and soft-hearted and soft in your speech. And you can lose that when you're being forced to become hardened. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And when I would feel emotionally disconnected from Mike, then you're going to lose physical connection, which is very important in marriage, of course, as well. And if I'm not close to Mike emotionally, I'm not going to want to be intimate with him physically. And that was something that I've written that in the book quite a bit more. But especially for women, we need to feel emotionally detached or attached to be physically attached. And so that's why it's important to have the conversation about being emotionally connected. And that's what intimacy is being connected emotionally. And it's a very fragile silken thread between husband and wife that has to be protected. Otherwise, it can snap and be broken. And the more detached you become emotionally, then it leads to physical detachment. And next thing you know, you're not close anymore. And that's what marriage is. It's intimacy. It's being very, very close, and don't want to lose that along the way. So that's what I write about. There's a lot more in the book about intimacy, but that's what that means, is how important it is to guard your heart and keep close as husband and wife, physically and emotionally.
Nice. So we're about an hour and 25 minutes in. I'll ask you one last question. It comes from a firefighter. And the question is, do you fart and or poop in front of your spouse?
It's funny. You friended me on something, I think on Instagram.
Instagram, yeah.
So I looked real quick just to make sure I was doing the right podcast and everything, and I think that was one of the things, and I was chuckling because I think like 2 or 3 of them, the guys said, no, absolutely not, never, never, never. And I said, oh man, we're going to be like a horror show for these things. No, absolutely. In fact, I think one of the ways I knew she was my girl was in our dorm. Going in our dorm, she was walking up the stairs ahead of me, and she started to move quick and let loose a little bit. And man, it was and it was like there was a rocket ship shot her up, and she was so humiliated and embarrassed. And I'm like, baby, you're the one. I mean, you're the one. It's
I love this girl.
No, I think the simplest answer to the question is those types of those types of functions occur in a normal household, and they happen. I think you do try, especially in the bathroom and that type of stuff. I do think you try to keep a separation and keep things, what's sacred's not the word, but some privacy is important. But we have a great time, and like Eddie Murphy said back in the day, everybody plays the fart game, man. So uh, we play the fart game too. So sorry to disappoint all the guys who said no, I would never do that. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah, is that about right?
Yeah, I don't know. I knew this guy was kind of for me, and this might be a horrible thing to share about him, but he and his roommate in college had a can that they kept in their room. Fill the can with gas and see whose can was worse than the other. Yeah, wow, this is just too
You keep it for later and surprise your friends.
Yeah.
It never even occurred to me that anybody would do such a thing, but it was so funny, and they got such a kick out of it. I thought, okay, that's
we've done good up until now. Now we've lost all credibility with your audience. I told you we would be transparent, so there you go.
There you go. Yeah, no, that's a great story. And if you were a young kid coming up to me and you told me that's what you did, I'd be like, dude, the fire service is for you.
Yeah.
100%.
Pretty obvious, yeah.
Yeah, and they used to launch water balloons down on the police cadets out of their dorm room. So I knew him pretty well as a wild kid. We've had a lot of fun together, but you do want to try to keep things somewhat romantic and not just be gross, with each. I'm not quite on his level that way, so he tries to be a gentleman, and I try to be a lady, but you're also human beings, so you got to be okay with imperfection.
I just think also you have to find every place you can in life to laugh.
Yeah.
Don't take, it's the same old thing, take the job seriously, take life seriously, take your marriage seriously. Don't take yourself so seriously.
Yeah.
And learn to laugh and have a good time. And there's plenty of troubles coming, in your life with kids and health and family and work and just, the political world, however you come down there, and church and whatever you do. There's plenty of troubles, man. Find places to laugh and let go and celebrate and enjoy life. And if the fart games get you there.
There you go. Do you have anything else that you want to add or talk about?
Other than just to all your firefighters out there, you're our absolute favorite people. We absolutely love the fire service. Best people in the world. We've traveled all across the country, Canada, Alaska, or Australia. And firefighters are very much the same no matter where we go, and just the absolute best people, and their families as well. And we're very honored to be a part of the fire service, and anything that we've written or said that helps you, we are delighted to share that with you. So it's an honor to be part of this amazing culture, amazing family.
I just encourage you to look out for each other, write an epic love story. Love the job. And if you don't love the job, I'd encourage you to find a way to love it, because you can really live your dreams professionally in the fire service. It's amazing. It's a privilege. It's a blessing. And then know that it will one day be over for you. And I think, you were in the class, so you saw how we end the class. We show a picture of the last 15 seconds of my operations career where my coat's hanging on the hook, and I took that picture 15 seconds before I walked out of the firehouse for the last time, at least as an active firefighter. I gave Seattle Fire, you give it your all. I guess that's one way to say it, man. I gave it a good run. I gave them a lot. I didn't leave anything on the table. I was spent and exhausted when I was done, when I actually retired. I didn't have anything else to live. It would have been a real tragedy on that day, because that picture is really emotional for me, because I had done that for 30 some years when I was walking out the door, and now it's over. And somebody else gets my rig and they get my guys, and it was really emotional. Would have been a tragedy, man, to realize that this part of my life is over. This significant part that defined who I was professionally is now over. And it would have been a tragedy to go home to an empty house because I had given everything to that and had let my home life dissipate. And so, just so you know, I didn't do that. I gave it what I could give Seattle Fire, which was a good run. I think if you asked anybody, they would say, yeah, pretty good run. May have done a crappy job, but a good run, right? I didn't sacrifice my family, and I went home to my best friend, and she wrapped her arms around me and just told me what a good job I did, how proud she was, and that we had a lot of cool stuff left to do. That wasn't all there was. I think for some people, it ends up being all there was, and they don't on the other side have anything else, and it can end up being a real tragedy. And, this is not a shot at Seattle Fire, but Seattle Fire moved on from me like that.
Yep.
Because, somebody had to get on my rig and take it, and the fires still come. You're not indispensable to the calling or to the department or whatever. I was, on the last day I worked, I was already kicked out of the city email system. I couldn't even log on to my own rig. I was like, I'm still I'm still a member, I couldn't, my guys had to log me on. That's just a small snapshot of the reality. The train keeps going, even when you step off of it, and you want to step off, not alone. You want to step off if you can to somebody who you're writing a love story with. The best thing we have this side of eternity, she and I, is the life that we've lived together and the life that we're committed to living together until that ends. That's the very best thing we have. We have lots of other cool things. We have wonderful kids and grandkids, family, and we have lots of hobbies and things. We love writing and teaching and talking, and we love the fire service, all of this stuff. The single best thing we have that we're most proud of is the story we're writing together, and we're really grateful for it. And I would just encourage you, do what you have to do to figure out how you can either start that story, pick that story up again, or, keep living that epic story. It's the best thing in your life.
Very well put. We'll end it with that. I really appreciate you guys coming on. It was great to see you guys at FDIC. Great to talk to you now. This has been a true honor for me. I really appreciate it.
Well, kudos on you for trying to shine some light in the darkness and to be authentic and transparent, and look forward to seeing all the good things you guys will do, man. It's been an honor to be a part of your show.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I just want you to know it is okay to love your wife.